Welcome back. It's time for chapter 10 in Julius again, and this one is called Julius and Dan Become Fathers. When Mitch saw the sticks in the big birdhouse, he wondered what Julius would do with them. So he put the big bird on the peak of the roof. Thank you, Julius yelled, hopping right to the door and into the house. Mitch peeked inside and saw the silly bird rearranging the sticks as if he knew exactly what he was doing. Come on, Julius, Mitch called after a few minutes. Let's go in now. I'm hungry. The bird kept moving sticks. I'm going, Julius. As Mitch hurried away, he heard sticks bumping around inside. Before he reached the house, Julius's little feet grasped his shirt shoulder. I'm hungry, Julius yelled when they burst through the kitchen door. Dan lowered the glass of water he'd been drinking, laughed at the bird, then finished his drink. Glug, 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 Julius yelled. Everyone broke up laughing. Finally, Dan wiped his eyes. Did I really sound that bad? Yes, Mitch said, laughing. He really did sound like someone swallowing, didn't he? Mitch asked. He did, Mom said. Now put him away and get washed up for supper. The next day after school, Mitch checked the big birdhouse again. The nest still looked a mess, but with different sized sticks and pink yarn. But he couldn't believe his eyes when he found a bluish-green egg in it. He ran to the house. You won't believe me, he said when he found Mom and Dan setting the table. I just saw an egg in the parrot house. You saw what? Mom asked. Dan shook his head. We don't have any chickens, Mitch. Could Julius have put a rock in there? No, it was an egg, too small for a chicken egg, too big for a bird egg, and bluish green. A look of wonder came over Dan's face. I think we'd better name that other parrot, he finally said. Mitch got so excited he could hardly talk. Do you think it's a parrot egg? I don't know what else. Did you see the other parrot there? Mitch shook his head. The next day, Mitch found another egg. He knew he shouldn't touch it, so he looked around for the other bird. She wasn't in the barn. He wondered how many eggs she would lay. He hung on to Julius's feet so he wouldn't go into the birdhouse. He might eat the eggs, for all Mitch knew. 2 days later, Mitch found the green parrot on the nest. She ignored him until he got really close. Then her feathers puffed out and she squawked at 9,000 decibels. Mitch backed out of the barn. Dan got home late that night with a pack of papers. I just learned a lot at the library, he said. First, there are more than 300 species of parrots. These two seem to be some variation of the Amazon lord parrots. Most of that kind lay 2 or 3 eggs which hatch in about 18 days. Mark your calendar, Mitch, and you'll have a pretty good idea when to start looking. After the family ate supper, they played a game of badminton on the lawn. Julius took off with the shuttlecock, the birdie, twice. Both times he headed for the barn and came back without it. At least we know where his new hiding place is, Mom said. Or else he's trying to impress his wife, Dan said with a grin. I think we'd better find a name for her. It's kind of awkward to always call her that other parrot. Tired from batting the birdie across the net, they all sat in lawn chairs in the shade of a big weeping willow tree. I don't know, Mitch said. I didn't even name Julius. Want a suggestion? Dan asked hesitantly. Sure, what is it? I have a couple. Julius Caesar's wife's name was Cornelia. If we don't like that, how about Cleopatra, his girlfriend after his wife died? Or we don't have to go with history at all. After all, these are living birds. Mitch agreed that a parrot who was about to be a mother needed a name. A really nice name. Say, Dan said eagerly, how about Ladybird? That was the name of a president's wife. Everyone liked that name, so that other parrot became Ladybird. As the days passed, Mitch noticed a lot more parrot food disappearing than usual. He followed Julius and learned his pet was feeding the mother. Mitch crept through the barn as if it were a church. He feared the mother bird might take off and the babies inside the eggs would die, or that she might try to eat him alive. Sometimes Julius sat on the eggs, but usually he brought food to her. After the 18th day, Mitch could hardly stand not knowing, but Ladybird stayed on the nest. Hey, Dan said one day, do you think we should put a parrot feeder in the barn? And maybe a waterer? Julius is wearing himself out carting food back and forth. So together they made a feeder that held several pounds. Then they quietly put it up in the barn away from the birdhouse. As they worked on the waterer, they heard the parrot making small, quiet sounds. Then Mitch heard something else. Listen, Dan, he whispered. After listening a few moments, Dan broke into a wide grin, then a soft chuckle. He nodded. We're hearing your baby parrots. They worked a while before Dan had something else to say. Something else I learned at the library the other day was that parrots need mates, and it's cruel to keep one alone. That's the way I was, Mitch. I needed my own family. I'm glad for Julius, and I'm glad for me. That night, Mitch got to thinking about his mistake calling Dan Dad. He wondered why he'd been so afraid of the changes in his life. The changes had all been good. No, not good, great. Thank you, God. Why didn't I trust you to work things out for me? He not only had Julius, but Ladybird and at least one baby. He had the best dog ever. Then he thought about all the nice things Dan had done for him since he'd lived here, and all the things he'd put up with. A real father couldn't be nicer. After they had read the lesson from Primary Treasure and prayed that evening, Mitch moved to the couch beside Dan. I think I did mean Dad this afternoon, he said almost shyly. You're a good dad, and I'm glad you married my mom. Tears glistened in Dad's eyes as he reached for Mitch. I can't tell you how glad I am to hear those words, son. I'll do my best to be a good father to you, he grinned, and to Julius. As the days passed, Mitch felt happier than he ever had in his entire life. He thanked God every day for bringing Dad into his life. He checked the parrots several times each day, hoping to see the babies, but Ladybird hid them. I'm never going to get to see those babies, he fussed one evening at the supper table. Sometimes I wonder if that bird really has any. And that's the end of chapter 10. What do you think? Does she or doesn't she?